The palace bells rang across the cold morning air, echoing against the gray stones of Whitehall. Their sound once meant celebration, the birth of a prince, the start of a feast, the return of a beloved king. But now they sounded hollow, distant, almost mournful. Inside a small, dimly lit chamber far from the grand halls, a woman sat alone. A candle flickered beside her, its flame trembling in the still air. Her hands, once kissed by kings and courtiers, now trembled slightly as they moved over a worn rosary. Each bead carried a prayer, each prayer carried a memory. Her name was Catherine of Aragon, once the Queen of England, once the cherished wife of Henry VIII. Now she was only the Dowager Princess of Wales, a title she had never accepted. Catherine had come to England as a young girl, a princess from Spain wrapped in dreams and faith. Her father was the great Ferdinand, her mother the powerful Isabella, the rulers who had united their kingdom under the cross. She believed her destiny was just as divine. When she first saw Henry, he was radiant, charming, strong, full of promise. He called her his heart's desire, and in those first years it seemed as though heaven had smiled upon them both. The court glittered, music filled the air. The people adored their queen, gentle, gracious, and pure. Catherine smiled often then. Her letters home were full of hope. "We are happy," she wrote once. "He loves me deeply. I am his true wife, blessed by God, but blessing thumbs can fade." Time, as it always does, began to test them. The palace that once echoed with laughter soon grew quiet with sorrow. One by one, her pregnancies ended in heartbreak. Sons were born still or died too soon. The hope of an heir, the dream of every queen, slipped further from her grasp, and each loss etched itself into her soul. At night, she would kneel before her chapel's altar, whispering prayers through tears. "If it be thy will, O Lord," she would say, "grant me strength to bear this burden." Henry was kind at first. He wept with her, held her hand. But as the years went on, his patience faded. He was a man obsessed with legacy, with the promise of sons to continue his name. And so, love turned to silence. The distance between them grew, small at first, then vast. Then came Anne Boleyn. She was young, lively, quick with words, and quicker with charm. Henry's eyes began to follow her wherever she went. Whispers moved through the court like smoke, dangerous, choking. Catherine pretended not to hear. She smiled through the banquets, through the hunts, through the long silences at supper. But deep down, she felt it, the shift in his heart. Still, she never accused him, never begged, never cursed his name. Her pride was quiet but unbreakable. To her ladies, she said softly, "I am his lawful wife. Before God, before the world. None can take that from me." Even as the king grew colder, she wrote to him, gentle letters filled with care, calling him my dearest lord and husband. He rarely replied. When Henry finally demanded an annulment, the world seemed to fall away. He claimed their marriage had been cursed, that because she was once married to his brother, God had denied them sons. Catherine stood before him, before the entire court, and spoke with the calm of a saint. "It was a true marriage," she said. "In the sight of God, I am your lawful wife, and you are my husband." Her voice did not shake, her eyes did not fall, but inside her heart was breaking. Exiled from court, she was sent to a lonely castle, far from the man she had once ruled beside. The rooms were damp, the firewood scarce, her ladies grew fewer as the years passed. Still, she prayed for him. In the silence of her chamber, Catherine whispered Henry's name, not with bitterness, but with love. "I still love him," she told her maid once, "though he remembers me no more." Her maid wept quietly beside her, but Catherine, she only smiled, as though she saw something no one else could. Perhaps she still believed that heaven watched, that her suffering had meaning, that love, true love, could never truly die. Outside, the world changed. Anne Boleyn was crowned queen. The church split in two. Henry called himself head of a new faith, while the woman who had once shared his bed now lived in silence, praying for his soul. Catherine refused to recognize the divorce, refused to accept any name but queen. Even as her health faded, even as messengers brought word that Henry had married again, she never cursed him. Instead, she wrote one final letter. It was short, written in a shaky hand. My most dear lord, king, and husband, the hour of my death draws near, and the tender love I owe you forces me to send you this farewell. My eyes desire you above all things. I forgive you all, and I pray God to forgive you too. May he protect you and our daughter, Mary, your loyal wife, Catherine. When she died, the candle beside her had burned almost to the end. The last light flickered and went out just as the bells of Whitehall rang again in the distance. Henry did not come to see her. He did not attend her funeral. But those who were there said her room smelled faintly of roses and that a small cross lay in her hands, the rosary wrapped tightly around her fingers, the same one she had held through years of heartbreak and faith. In the years that followed, history remembered Catherine as the queen who would not yield, the woman who loved a man who forgot her, the wife who lost everything but her dignity, the believer who found strength not in victory, but in grace. They called her stubborn, holy, tragic. But perhaps she was something simpler, a woman who refused to let love become hate. Sometimes late at night, when the palace corridors fall silent, some say you can still hear the faint sound of a woman's whisper, a prayer, soft and steady, echoing through the stones. It is said that she prays not for herself, but for him, for the king who broke her heart, and for the man she never stopped loving. The bells fade once more, slow, solemn, and distant. And somewhere, deep within the cold walls of history, the queen who waited in silence still kneels, her lips moving in prayer, her faith unbroken, her heart eternal. The sound of quills scratching on parchment fills the room. The ink bleeds slowly into the page, words of love, not anger, words that will never be read. Outside, winter wind beats against the castle walls. Inside, a woman wrapped in a faded shawl bends over her desk, the candlelight trembling across her face. Her hand shakes as she writes, "My most dear lord and husband, I pray that you remember the vows we made before God." The letter will join dozens more carried by messengers who no longer bow when they speak her name. Once she was the Queen of England. Now she is simply Catherine, the Dowager Princess of Wales. In London, the king's heart belongs to another. Anne Boleyn, dark-eyed, clever, dangerous. Her laughter fills the same rooms that once echoed with Catherine's prayers. She does not kneel before the king. She teases him, challenges him, makes him feel alive. And Henry, the same man who once prayed beside Catherine, now forgets the sound of her voice. Catherine's letters lie unopened, her gifts returned, her name forbidden in the palace. Even their daughter Mary is taken from her, forced to live apart, no longer called a princess. A mother's arms, once full of hope, are now empty. But Catherine's spirit does not break. Her castle is small, her servants few, yet each morning she rises early, kneels before her altar, and whispers the same prayer, "Lord, grant me patience, and forgive him." To those around her, she is calm, almost saintly, but her silence hides a storm. At night, she dreams of the man she once knew, the young Henry with kind eyes, the husband who once swore eternal love. She wakes before dawn, clutching her rosary, whispering, "He is lost, but he was mine once." In the royal court, Anne Boleyn now shines like a jewel. Her gowns shimmer, her hair crowned with pearls. Henry calls her my heart and my comfort. But even in the middle of her triumph, she knows the truth. Catherine still lives, and as long as Catherine breathes, the crown on Anne's head trembles, because deep down, everyone knows Catherine is still the true queen. Henry grows restless. He paces his chambers, papers scattered before him, advisors whisper of laws and holy decrees. He listens, and then declares what no English king had dared before, greater than, "Rome shall no longer rule England. I am the head of the church." A single decision, born from desire, tears the soul of a nation. Priests are forced to choose between their faith and their king. Old friends turn against one another. Church bells fall silent as Henry builds his new kingdom, not upon grace, but upon defiance. All for the sake of one woman's smile. Catherine hears of it from afar. The messenger bows, stammers, then speaks the words she already knew were coming. The king has remarried. Anne Boleyn is now his queen. Catherine nods once. There is no cry, no tears, only silence. She turns back to her table, picks up her pen, and writes another letter. For your soul's sake, my lord, I beg you, remember your vows before God. I forgive you with all my heart. Then she presses her seal into the wax and hands it to her maid. Her face is pale but serene. Greater than he must know I hold no anger, she whispers. Only love. Back in London, Anne gives birth, not to the son Henry had hoped for, but to a daughter. The child is named Elizabeth. Henry smiles for the court, but his eyes are already shadowed. The promises he made to Anne that she would give him sons, that she would make him whole again, begin to feel hollow. At night, when the palace grows still, he sometimes dreams of another voice. Soft, calm, steady. Catherine's voice. He wakes, uneasy, haunted by the memory of her quiet faith. Time passes. Catherine's health begins to fade. The winters are harsh in the north, and the castle walls let in the cold. Still, she keeps her faith. Her servants beg her to rest, but she kneels before her crucifix every morning, whispering prayers for Henry, for Mary, even for Anne. She is not my enemy, she says softly. She is the path he chose. Her maid, weeping, asks why she never curses him. Catherine smiles faintly. Greater than, because love does not die with a crown. It dies when we let hate take its place. Far away, Henry continues to build his New England. He signs edicts, executes those who oppose him. But in the quiet moments, when the courtiers are gone and the music fades, his thoughts drift northward, to a woman who once held his hand in the chapel, to the wife who never raised her voice even as he broke her heart. He never writes her, he never visits. But he cannot forget her. Her name lingers in his mind like the echo of a prayer he can no longer say. By now, Anne's crown feels heavier. The court whispers that the king's new love is fading, that his temper grows cruel. Anne begins to look over her shoulder, afraid of ghosts that have no faces. But the ghost she truly fears wears no chains. She wears faith. Catherine's silence haunts them both. No rebellion, no armies, just one woman's quiet refusal to hate. That is her power. One evening, as the snow falls outside her window, Catherine feels the weight of her years. Her hands tremble as she reaches for her rosary. Her voice, faint but steady, fills the small room. Into your hands, O Lord, I commend my spirit. Forgive him, for he knew not what he did. Her maid kneels beside her, weeping. In that still moment, the candle flame flickers, and Catherine of Aragon, Queen of England in all but name, closes her eyes for the last time. News of her death reaches Henry days later. For a long while, he says nothing. Then he orders black cloth hung across the court. When no one is watching, he locks himself away. Those who passed his chambers said they heard him whisper only once, greater than, she was a noble woman. Nothing more. In the chapel, her body is laid to rest beneath a simple stone. No crown, no jewels, no royal ceremony. Yet those who came to mourn felt something deeper than pity. They felt peace. Because Catherine's strength was never in her throne, it was in her grace. She lost a kingdom, but she kept her soul. And long after Henry's pride and Anne's beauty had faded, her name remained unbroken. The candle burns low. The ink on her last letter has dried. And somewhere in the silent halls of history, Catherine's prayers still echo, gentle, forgiving, eternal. The wind howled through the stone corridors of Kimbolton Castle, carrying with it the sound of winter, cold, sharp, and endless. Snow pressed against the narrow windows, turning the world outside into a blur of white. Inside, a single candle burned low beside a bed. Its light trembled across the face of a woman who had once been Queen of England. Catherine of Aragon lay still, her breathing shallow, her body weakened by years of exile and sorrow. Yet even now, even as the world she once ruled faded into memory, her spirit remained steady. Beside her bed lay parchment, ink, and a quill. Her hands trembled as she lifted the pen. Her fingers, once adorned with jewels, were now thin and pale, but her heart was still full. She began to write, "My most dear Lord, King and husband." The words came slowly. Each stroke of the quill seemed to drain what little strength remained in her. Greater than, I forgive you everything. Mine eyes desire you above all things." Her maid stood silently nearby, tears slipping down her cheeks. She wanted to speak, to beg her mistress to rest, but Catherine shook her head gently. "This must be finished," she whispered. "He must know." Outside, the bells of a distant chapel rang the hour. The sound reached her faintly, as though from another world. Catherine paused, the quill hovering above the page. Her thoughts drifted back, not to her years of loss or exile, but to the beginning. To a young prince with laughing eyes, to a wedding day bathed in sunlight, to the sound of Henry's voice promising that his heart would never change. For a moment, her lips curved into a fragile smile. She dipped the quill once more and continued to write. Not of anger, not of betrayal, but of forgiveness. "Greater than I commend my soul into the hands of God, my Creator, hoping that in His goodness He will forgive me all my sins. I also forgive you everything, and I wish you well. May God protect you and our daughter, Mary." The ink bled through the parchment, soft and uneven, as if the paper itself could feel her exhaustion. When she finished, she folded the letter carefully and pressed her seal into the wax, the last act of a queen. Her voice barely rose above a whisper. "Greater than send it to the king. It is, My farewell." Days later, that letter would reach Whitehall Palace. Servants carried it through long corridors, past guards and courtiers until it reached Henry's private chambers. It was said the king held it in his hand for a long while, staring at the familiar seal, her royal crest still bearing the mark of Spain. Some said he never opened it. Others swore he did, and that tears fell upon the ink. History does not tell us which is true, but either way, the silence that followed spoke louder than any word. Back in Kimbolton, Catherine's strength faded with the light. The candle beside her bed burned low, its wax spilling across the table. Her maid sat at her side, holding her hand, whispering prayers through tears. Catherine's voice, soft but clear, broke the stillness. "Tell my daughter I loved her with all my heart." Then, after a pause, she added, "And tell the king I prayed for his soul every day." Her eyes turned toward the crucifix above her bed, the same she had carried from palace to palace, through every trial and humiliation. In that final moment, the weight of crowns and kingdoms fell away. There was only faith and love. As dawn broke, the queen who had once ruled England breathed her last. The candle's flame flickered once and went out. When word reached Henry, the court held its breath. He was at Greenwich, surrounded by courtiers and musicians when the messenger arrived. The man knelt, head bowed, and spoke the words the king had long expected, yet dreaded to hear. "Her Majesty, the Queen, is dead." Henry's face remained still. No grief, no shock, only silence. He dismissed the messenger, turned and gave a single command greater than wear yellow. The court gasped. Yellow, the color of joy, of new beginnings. That day, Henry appeared in public dressed in golden silk, Anne Boleyn at his side. They smiled for the crowd. They spoke of peace and of England's future, but behind the laughter, whispers spread like shadows. "The queen is dead," they murmured, "yet the king does not mourn." And yet, that night, when the halls grew empty and the torches dimmed, Henry shut himself away. He ordered that no one disturb him. Those who passed his chamber said they heard nothing, no weeping, no prayer, only silence. But some swore they saw him sitting alone, Catherine's letter in his hand. The seal broken, the ink smudged as if touched by tears. Perhaps he remembered her eyes, the way they had once looked at him, not as a king, but as a man. Perhaps he remembered her voice, soft and steady, calling him her dear lord and husband. Perhaps, for the first time in years, he felt the weight of what he had done. A nation had been torn apart for his desire, a faith broken, a love lost forever. The next morning, he returned to court as though nothing had changed. Orders were given, music played, life went on. But something within him had shifted, quietly, invisibly. He would never speak her name again. He forbade prayers for her soul. Yet her shadow lingered everywhere, in the chapel, in the echo of her daughter's voice, in the guilt he could never name aloud. And though Anne Boleyn wore the crown, she could never escape the ghost that haunted him, the ghost of the woman who had loved him, even in ruin. Years later, when Henry's own health began to fail, he would still dream of her. He would wake in the dark, sweating, whispering her name, not in anger, but in something that almost sounded like sorrow. Because Catherine's letter, the one he may never have opened, remained the truest mirror of his soul. It held the one thing his power could never command: forgiveness. In the quiet corners of Kimbolton Castle, they say her spirit lingers still, not in vengeance, not in pain, but in peace. And if you listen closely, when the wind moves through those cold corridors, you can almost hear her voice, faint but steady. Greater than I forgive you everything. Mine eyes desire you above all things. The bells that once rang for her death still echo across time, slow, solemn, and mournful. Each chime a reminder that even kings can be haunted not by the wars they wage, but by the love they destroyed. And so ends the story of Catherine of Aragon, the queen who died alone yet left behind a love the world would never forget. The fire crackled in the great hall of Whitehall Palace, its glow dancing against tapestries and golden walls. It was winter again, the kind of winter that seeps into the bones, the kind that makes a man remember. The once mighty Henry VIII, King of England, sat slumped in his chair. The laughter of courtiers had faded. The throne room that once echoed with life now felt hollow, haunted by silence. His hair had turned gray, his legs ached, and in the quiet, his past began to whisper. Around him, portraits stared down, 6 faces, 6 wives, 6 stories. Each one painted to please, each one promised eternity. But even as he looked upon them, one face refused to stay gone. Soft eyes, gentle hands, a calm voice that once called him my lord and husband. Her name, spoken by few now, still lingered in the air like a prayer: Catherine. Years had passed since her death. The kingdom had changed. Queens had risen and fallen. Anne's laughter had turned to screams. Jane Seymour had died, giving him the son he craved, and others had come and gone like passing seasons. But Catherine, she had never truly left. Servants said that sometimes, when the king sat by the fire at night, his eyes would glaze over, lost in the flames, and in that low, tired voice he would murmur, "The Queen, where is the Queen?" No one dared to answer, no one dared to ask which queen he meant. But those who had known him in the days of his youth, those who had once seen him smile beside a Spanish princess, they knew. They knew it was her. The world outside his walls had already forgotten her. Her name had been scratched out of official records, her portraits removed from the galleries. No prayers were said in her memory, by his order. And yet, even kings cannot silence the heart. In the kitchens, old servants still whispered of her gentleness. They remembered how she would thank them with a smile, how she shared bread with the hungry, how her kindness had reached even the lowest halls of the palace. When the new queens demanded gold and praise, Catherine had asked only for peace. To those who remembered her, she was not just a queen. She was the soul of what the court had once been, before pride had devoured love. Henry's health worsened with each passing year. The leg wound that had once come from battle now oozed and burned. He was carried everywhere, a giant, trapped within his own body. At night, he slept fitfully, muttering names: Anne, Jane, Mary, Elizabeth, and sometimes, in the faintest whisper, Catherine. His servant said he would wake with tears in his eyes, whispering, "She prayed for me." Then, silence. By day, he played the part of a king, angry, proud, defiant. He signed papers with shaking hands, ordered walls built, and spoke of God and power. But at night, when the candles burned low, his gaze always returned to the fire. He would stare for hours, lost in thought, until the flames became memories. He saw her again, the young woman who had once stepped off a ship from Spain, full of faith and light. He saw her smile, the way she looked at him not as a king but as a man. And he saw again and again the moment he turned away from her. The courtiers noticed a change in him. He no longer spoke of glory or victory. His laughter, once booming, was now thin and hollow. "His Majesty grows melancholy," they whispered. "Perhaps he feels the weight of his sins." But no one dared to say her name aloud. Even now, she was the wound that history tried to forget, the one love that outlasted power. In the chapel, candles flickered as priests prayed for the soul of the king. He sat in the shadows, his hands clasped, eyes fixed on the crucifix. For the first time in years, he felt something he could not name, a mix of sorrow, longing, and something like shame. He thought of her last words, carried by the wind of memory. "I forgive you everything. Mine eyes desire you above all things." Those words haunted him more than any rebellion or war. Forgiveness, gentle, absolute, was something he had never learned to give himself. When the king finally lay dying, his courtiers stood close, whispering prayers. But he seemed far away, eyes half closed, lips moving faintly. Some said he was calling for his son. Others said he was calling for God. But one old servant, who had once served Catherine, swore he heard a different word, soft, cracked, and full of grief. Greater than Catherine. And for a moment, the great King of England, the man who broke the church, the man who changed a nation, looked not like a ruler, but like a husband begging for forgiveness. History would remember him for his 6 wives, for the broken church, for the blood spilled in the name of pride. But behind all the noise, one truth remained. He had once been loved, truly, deeply, and purely, by a woman whose faith outlasted his crown. Centuries later, the world still speaks of Henry's wives, Anne's beauty, Jane's devotion, Catherine Howard's youth, Catherine Parr's patience. But Catherine of Aragon, the first, the faithful, often fades into the background. A name lost between pages, a shadow behind more tragic queens. And yet, her story endures not through drama or scandal, but through quiet grace. Because love like hers does not vanish. It lingers in memory, in prayer, in the spaces between history's words. Sometimes, when the halls of Kimbolton Castle grow still, the wind moves through its corridors, carrying a faint sound like a whisper. Greater than mine eyes desire you above all things. And in the dark, one might imagine an old king staring into the fire, whispering the same words back. Because some loves do not die, they do not break or fade entirely. They simply become ghosts, not to frighten, but to remind. And so, Catherine of Aragon became not just the first queen of Henry's story, but the last voice in his heart. A name the world forgot, but his soul never could.